So for those of us who do not know who are you and what do you do?
Well, I'm JC, and I run a consulting firm in controlled environment agriculture, but I'm also the front man in an exciting new reggae band around here called Finix. That's what we're here to talk about today.
Where are you from?
I'm originally from Lebanon. I grew up there, that's where my dad's from, and ended up in the U.S. in 2006 as a refugee, and been here almost ever since. Lived a couple other places, but I've been here over a decade.
Tell us about your childhood growing up there and when you moved to the U.S. as well.
Well, whatever you're kind of growing up around is what's normal to you, even if objectively it's abnormal. So what was normal growing up in Lebanon were checkpoints on the way to school with Syrian soldiers, like a foreign army occupying you, and you just kind of wave at them and smile, and then you'd get to school, and in the middle of lecture almost every day, you'd have the Israeli planes breaking the sound barrier, show of force, trying to intimidate, terrorize everybody, and you'd run to the window and laugh and point, and you're kids, right? You don't understand what these things are. But eventually, I was a teenager, and I was ready to leave. So when I got the opportunity to stay here as a refugee, I was quite happy about it, because it meant peace, like stability, tranquility, space, quiet, nature. Lebanon is an amazing place, super rich in culture and social warmth and history, ruins, beautiful nature, fruits, but it lacks stability, like that peace of mind where you can plan a future and build things that will stay built. It's kind of a mess, but what are you going to do?
At what age did you start creating music, and when did you start taking it seriously?
Well, I started tinkering with music at age 2. This is a message to all parents. It's a really good idea to give your toddlers musical toys, cheap little drums and pianos and what have you, flutes, recorders, because they get to kind of explore that, and you get to get a sense of their musical aptitude early on, that inborn talent. And then my folks were nice enough to get me some piano lessons at age 8, learned the fundamentals, decided that wasn't the instrument for me. But then I bought myself a guitar and a bass, and I think it was maybe age 12 that I started writing songs.
Tell us about how your group came together.
So this group, Finix, importantly, is a collective. And it's a model I picked up from another band that I really like. It's called 10-Foot Ganja Plants. They're out of Ithaca, New York. And the way they operate is that they have many members. In fact, you can't find out who they are. It's a rotating group. It's more like a football team with people on the bench, people on the field. You can swap out. It's kind of more resilient that way. So it happened to us out of necessity. I realized that for something to grow as fast as it can and take advantage of the opportunities presented to us without having to turn anything down just because of one person being unwilling or unable, the collective model made sense. So about a year ago is when I came up with this concept by myself and started writing these songs, and I've had a lot of help from a lot of people so far in some of the writing, lyrics and music and recording and more. I mean, I get a lot of help, and I couldn't be so far without it. But people have come and gone. Currently, there's a total of 14 members, including me, and they're from everywhere. But most of them are right here in Northwest Arkansas, and either we're lifelong reggae fans or kind of discovering it for the first time and developing their love for it. It speaks to them on a deep level. It's pretty cool to see everybody meeting in the middle like this from very different origins.
How did you develop the love for reggae?
I first found out about reggae because of one of my dad's records. He had a nice collection of Bob Marley specifically. So when I was maybe 8 or 9, I found these. I was digging through the CDs and I found them, and I was listening to all sorts of blues and jazz at the time. And all of this was actually before my phase of playing punk and grunge and metal and just going through all of it to experience the variety before you settle. Well, I think I'm settled now, and it's reggae for life because it is so compatible with everything else. I mean, you can inject blues, jazz, funk, rock, punk, whatever you want into reggae, You can mix it with cultural music from everywhere. I've heard Korean reggae, Sudanese reggae, Peruvian reggae. It's all great. So this seems to be the universal denominator in music. And then you start to learn about some of the icons like Bob Marley, who may have been a questionable person to his wife, to his kids, to his friends, but his mark on humanity and global consciousness is undeniable. And then you follow that trail a little bit and find out why he's a Rastafarian, and look into this personage, Haile Selassie, and learn about his life, which was absolutely remarkable. And a journey of sorts begins. And I'm enjoying every step of that journey right now.
Tell us about your experiences in the local music scene here in Northwest Arkansas.
It's been a mixed bag here in the local Northwest Arkansas scene, you know. It's one of the best places to be in the country, I think, in general. Let's give it that. It's beautiful, it's peaceful, it's natural. People are fairly simple and laid back, if you know what I mean. But at the same time, our corner here is very metropolitan. Specifically because of the university and some of the big corporations. You get people from countries that you probably would never go to, and you meet them here. And that's a beautiful thing. So in the music industry, I haven't had a whole lot of luck. If I had, I probably wouldn't have started this project, you know, just to highlight the good that comes from bad. Okay, like I've had a lot of rejections, had a lot of false starts. I've joined bands that either I didn't enjoy or that didn't enjoy me, and nothing else has really worked out in that sense. I actually took a very long break from music, unrelated to that, but because I was busy with getting degrees and moving and switching jobs, and you just, you know, your stuff gets into storage and you're bouncing around, so you put that away and you say, I'll get right back to it. And then 12 years later, you say, I didn't get right back to it. It took me getting sick to realize that I needed to stop procrastinating and get back to this passion.
Speaking about jobs, we're in an age now where people think that you have to work long hours and work really, really hard on whatever job that you're doing to earn $1, just to take that dollar and go buy bigger and nicer things, material things for themselves. How do you feel about hustle culture?
Now, with all due respect to everybody, what you described is American hustle culture. You know, people feel that way in America, and it's not their fault. It's the program. You know, society has been influenced and developed to shame people that don't think and act that way. And needless to say, it's unhealthy, you know. So capitalism and consumerism have taken over the entire world, okay? So you'll find some of that everywhere. But people that end up going to Europe or South America or Africa or parts of Asia notice something when they do. They notice that people over there are just as broke as us. They're just as busy. They're just as tired. They have just as many kids, just as many problems, but they're happy. They're not spiraling out of control. They're not anxious. They're not depressed. They're not doing that to themselves. They're not allowing the system to internalize all of these external stressors because it's not worth it. It's not helpful to them. It's not healthy, and it doesn't serve anything. So I've been spending a lot of time in Brazil, and those people got some standards. Their roads are nicer than ours. Their healthcare is nicer than ours, and it's free. Their university is free. Everything runs on an app. Like, it felt like the future in ways. And so everyone was working hard, and everything was well built, and everything looked great, but they have problems. They have poverty. They have natural disasters. They've got corruption, and they know it, and they're dealing with it, but it's not dragging them down. You know, that's a choice, personally. And when a person makes that choice to free themselves of this baggage, and you multiply that by 300 million, you get a culture. So our culture needs healing, and some of that healing comes from looking to our friends and neighbors around the world as to how they cope with these things. Some of them have been coping with these problems for longer than we've been a country. Lebanon is essentially ancient Phoenicia, and these same people have been living there for more than 9,000 years. They've seen all this. They know how to deal with it. It's just a cycle. You keep going.
You've been very vocal about this. But for those of us who do not know you, how do you feel about the war between Israel and Hamas?
Well, it's not a war between Israel and Hamas. It's a war between a colonizing foreign invader who wants to steal land and their victims, who are the Palestinian people, who are the indigenous inhabitants of that piece of land. It's been Palestine for thousands of years, but obviously a name is not what matters. What matters is human rights of the people, and you've got large groups, especially of leaders in the Western world, that support the invaders, the usurpers. And there's this story about their connection to the land. And it may or may not be true. In any case, everybody deserves freedom and safety and so on and so forth. So, none of us proponents will tell you that Jews from Europe can't move to Palestine to have a great life. But the Palestinians, who are the descendants of Canaanites and Hebrews and Phoenicians and Arabians and Greeks and so on and so forth, also have the same right. And it's being denied, So what you see is one of the most successful feats of propaganda ever in the history of the world. It's been going on for 76 years in action, starting with the Nakba catastrophe, where Zionist militias, who were at the time classified as terrorist gangs, wiped out 500 plus villages, They lined up thousands of people and shot them, terrorized everybody to leave their villages. They demolished these villages. They took them over. They changed their names. They brought in more Europeans. They committed terrorist acts in Arab countries against their own Jewish people to scare them into going here to engineer an ethno-state, which means that you, by terrorism, make sure that your ethnic group is the majority. By the way, the ethnic group thing is a lie, okay? Even for Arabs. Arabs is not an ethnicity. It's language that binds us. But Arabs are Asians and Africans and Europeans, and Arabs are diverse. Jews are diverse. Jews is not an ethnicity. The only person that thought that was Hitler. And now the Zionist state is following that same lie, saying that they're a country for Jews everywhere and that Palestine is exclusive to one ethnicity. It's in the middle of the old world. Literally. It's on the route from everywhere to everywhere. It's always been mixed. There's never been one ethnicity there, or one religion or anything. And everyone throughout history who has tried to exterminate everyone and put themselves only and be exclusive has failed. So they're about to fail, but they've only gotten this far because of the assistance of some of the most anti-Semitic world powers who themselves are all guilty of genocide as well. That's why they arm this genocide currently happening. That's why they defend it. That's why they shield it from prosecution, even undermining international law as they do so. It's absolutely preposterous, it's pathetic, and it should really be alarming to Americans to what extent all of our leaders here are selling out our country and its morals and its future and its value to defend these Nazis. That's the truth. You've got the descendants of refugees crammed into concentration camps, being starved and bombed when they're playing, when they're praying, when they're fishing, when they're operating, babies being targeted specifically, women being targeted specifically, journalists, doctors. It's all documented. We have way more documentation than we did with the Nazis. In fact, we didn't know it was happening until it was over, very sadly. And then we told ourselves, never again. Meaning we're going to pay attention to these things. We are going to take strong, decisive, and quick action against these things, and we're never going to let this happen to anybody again. And that was a lie. It was a lie, because the Holocaust was one in a long string of genocides. Okay, that's an important thing. You have to acknowledge it, You have to pay homage, you have to pay respects, but you have to remember that no people are the only people that have suffered, you know? Ask the African Americans, ask the Native Americans, ask the Vietnamese. Suffering is actually what unites us, in a sense, right? And the desire to end suffering is kind of part of the human evolution, is part of civilization. What is civilization? The West right now talks about being the bastions of civilization because we have shiny things, because we have tall buildings, because we have conveniences for people who can afford them, you know? But we've let things slip. And here's the reason. Western civilization, starting with the Greeks and the Romans and the British and the Italians and now the Americans taking the torch of empire, have tried to sever human connection with ourselves, with nature, with each other, with our food, with religion, and monopolize those things, you know. And they've succeeded in ways. And they succeed temporarily. It's very effective. These are expensive campaigns with a lot of resources. But we are going to have to fight back. You know, what they're trying to take from us is invaluable. It's the most valuable thing we have as a species. We need to start to think and act like a species, like a global family, and take the power back, because a lot of these deaths are unnecessary. A lot of this suffering, this destruction is unnecessary. How far would our species go if we were cooperating and building and feeding and healing instead of the $1 trillion a year we spend in this country alone on warfare, you know? Do you honestly think we can afford that? Like, are we doing so great we've got spending money to bomb 87 countries? I think everyone in their right mind knows that that's a bad idea. It doesn't make you friends. It doesn't make you safe. It doesn't make you respected. It doesn't build you up. Like, in war, everyone loses. And what we have right now is a war industry, a global perpetual war of the most evil people. There's no evil people, but people who have dedicated themselves, they're making evil choices and just want to profit off of this. Now, we need to recognize that as a mental illness. Just today, I see people glorifying this Walton lady over here. Wow, billionaire, bravo. These people are mentally ill. You're hoarding resources that could help other people and doing nothing with it. You're profiting off of the destruction of people and futures and cultures and environments. You're mentally ill. You need help. You need to be committed right now. You should not be walking freely. You should not be a respected leader in our community if we are being honest with ourselves about what our values are. But we are not. In this culture right here, we have a tendency to be dishonest with ourselves first. And that makes it very easy to lie to other people. You know, when you're telling yourself toxic positivity every day because you don't want to face reality, because you have that privilege. Other people do not have the option of not facing reality. It wakes you up at 2 a.m. with your building falling down on you because of us. And we're like, well, I don't want to think about it. I don't want to feel that. I don't want to do anything. You have to, because that's your family. Because if you don't, those forces will go unchecked. They'll keep moving. They will come for you. You know, if you didn't defend black people during slavery, and now you find the cops won't let you talk or move or anything, you let that happen. First to them, thinking it won't catch up with you. Now it's caught up with you. This is imperative. So that, by the way, is what our music is about. It has to be packaged in sweet delicacy. It's got to make you move and sway and rock and groove. But that's the essence, is the message of unity, power through solidarity, and the revolution that needs to happen. You know, it's not a violent one. It's a revolution of the mind. We need to change how we think. We need to take control of our minds and engineer our feelings so that we can lift ourselves and everybody up to where we were destined to be.
How did you develop the passion to speak up for people who are oppressed?
I think it probably starts with a good example. You know, my parents are very good people, and so they set that example. Not everybody has that, and I've come to realize that itself is a privilege as well. Some people have it and waste it. Some people don't have it and find their way to that anyways, which is even more impressive, you know. But I have it, and I'm trying not to waste it. A good upbringing, a strong set of morals. It's a choice every day to apply them, you know. And I lapse too. I make mistakes and sometimes don't live up to my own expectations, and then I try not to beat myself up, but do better. And so passion is not really a choice. Like, you don't decide what your passions are. Something moves you. And it's also true that it's easier for me to identify with this catastrophe because they look like me. They talk like me, they dance like me, they eat like me. They're my neighbors, for goodness sake. Palestinians and Lebanese are only separated by an imaginary line that the British and the French drew. These people are 40 miles away from my house. They're the same people, okay? But that doesn't mean I don't care about all the displaced people getting murdered and tortured and everything in the Congo and Sudan and Myanmar and everything. I do. That hurts my heart a lot too, and I feel like it's the same story and the same mission. But I'm not from there, so I don't know as much as that. So I look for opportunities to find out more from people who do know. I just don't want to make any assumptions. When it comes to Palestine, Lebanon, Israel, all of that, I'm your authority right here. I know. I lived that. I was there. And my life has been affected by it in huge ways. So I can answer your questions about that one. So that drives me to take more of a leadership role.
I'm curious. I want to know how you feel about the 2024 presidential candidates.
I think there's a notion among Americans that who the president is matters, and that they're not just a puppet, and that they cause culture. But we need to be honest with ourselves and examine this real quick. Culture, who people are and how they behave and think, result in symptoms. Donald Trump and Kamala Harris are symptoms of those, okay? He is a product of America. She is a product of America. And we've never had worse choices. Ever. Because we keep choosing them. Every election, Americans get together, and a lot of people put in their best effort to care and learn and make a good choice. But we're being given bad choices on purpose. So what you hear very often is people being forced, they say they're forced, to pick between the lesser of two evils. I get that, okay? Again, that's not your fault. But what you're telling me is you just picked evil. You just voluntarily agreed to go with it. Now, what you need to realize is you're not forced to do that. Nobody's holding a gun to your head saying, vote for these people. They've presented them to you. It's an illusion, you know, to say, here's your choices, make your pick. Hey, you like ice cream? I've got feces and vomit. What do you want to eat? I'm legitimately not interested in either of those, so no thank you should be most people's response. There is no candidate that represents what matters to me. I'm not going to be pulled to this extreme or that extreme. By the way, fun fact, our left-wing liberal progressives here in America, if you ask European people, they'll let you know that those people are more right than they're far right. Okay, what is far right? What are these? So words matter. That's another reason of the word sound power that we're engaged in. Far right means fascism. You know what I mean? Authoritarianism. In other words, the state dictates everything. You go with it. Law and order. Okay. Well, America is supposed to be all about freedom. Interesting thing about freedom is that freedom and security don't really coexist. Freedom is risk. Freedom means anything can happen. You know, cowboy style. Freedom. Nature. If you care about that, then you don't spend more money on security than anything else and let everything else suffer. We're spending the money we don't have for hospitals and schools and roads and bridges on security. And then we're using that security money to do things that objectively make us less secure. It's madness. So your choices now are between orange-haired dictator over here who's honest about it. I think that's why people like him, because he's a horrible person and he knows it and he says so, and and he tells normal people how the system works. He's exposing other powerful people and saying, yeah, me and my billionaire friends, we do this to you. And they're like, wow, that's honest. Thanks for letting us know. The other guys on the other side, go have dinner with him at his house. They're friends, they're colleagues, they're partners. They're playing a game on you. But they pretend to be champions of human rights, civil liberties, protecting black Americans, gay Americans, female Americans. That's who they are. That's what party they are. So they funnel the best of us into a corral over here, get our approval, get our money, and then never go after that stuff. They've had so many opportunities to legalize cannabis, to change to break the glass ceiling, to pay reparations, to do all the things that we expect them to, the hope we feel when we elect someone like Obama and now Kamala Harris. It's a sham. It's a sham, unfortunately. As well-spoken as they can be, as good-looking as they can be, their records show that they're highly corrupt. So in my mind, especially as an Arab, Donald Trump and Kamala Harris are both equally bad choices. Fun fact, they're not the only choices. Now we get to the other choices. There's Cornel West, Jill Stein, so on and so forth. There's a handful, right? And when you bring them up, people will say they have no chance. Yeah, they have no chance because you and everyone else say and think that. The minute you stop saying and thinking that, they do have a chance. But you can't wait for everyone else. You got to do what you got to do between you and your conscience now and let everyone else figure it out. We have a shortage of leaders in this country. You know what I mean? Really, in every way. That's why it's so easy to stand out. When you see someone in your community feeding people and clothing people and building things and whatever, it's remarkable. You're like, wow, there's not many people doing that. You stand out. It's never taken so little to stand out. You put in a little effort into life and you're outstanding. What a great opportunity. It's never been easier. Go for it.
What is your philosophy on life? How do you go through life? What kind of rules do you create for yourself in order for you to make it through life as peacefully as possible?
Life, I've realized, is most definitely a gift. That's a little bit cliche, right? But I've had to truly internalize that when faced with losing it, that you go through that process. And so everything that you are not thankful for is also a gift. You know, being born in the ghetto or having to deal with a war zone or anything unpleasant that is associated with suffering is also a gift. Good things come from bad. People grow and change in ways denied to others through their trauma, you know. And so your job to fully take advantage of the gift and fulfill your purpose is to keep learning, keep moving, keep living, you know. So mistakes are a big part of it. Mistakes are essential. They're important. You just need to pay attention. One thing that's true I've realized is that time does not equal experience. You know, you can be 70 years old, but you sat on your couch watching Seinfeld. You're not experienced. That's why Jimi Hendrix asks you, are you experienced? Are you immersing yourself in life? Are you paying attention, learning the lessons from the good, the bad, and the ugly? So my philosophy in life now is to kind of juice it. I've been faced with the self-care conundrum. I've been a workaholic. I've been proud of it. I'm not proud of it anymore, and I'm trying not to be. Trying to find balance, equilibrium, which is important too. You know, as a human, you matter just as much as your accomplishments, more actually, you know. And you can affect the world and other people in ways that you don't realize. And that can grow exponentially. So don't sell yourself short. Don't hold back. And don't be afraid of possibilities, you know. There's risk involved in getting out of bed in the morning, You could die every time you step out of your house. There's no reason not to do it. That's the scarcity of the matter. That's the value. Like, life is fragile, it's precious, it's unique, it's rare. And if you live in awe of that, you're going to have a fantastic life. Or at the very least, super interesting.
What advice do you have for local musicians who feel discouraged because they haven't reached success, the success that they want in their careers, in their music careers? What advice do you have for those musicians?
Well, I'm not an experienced musician in that sense. I'm not ahead of anybody. But from a human perspective, you define your success. Make sure that you are defining your success, not letting somebody else do it. Because if it's not even your definition to begin with, you're not going to get there. And when you do define it, try to set your expectations so that you can be pleasantly surprised. Okay? Expectations and standards are different. Standard is, my tolerance level. I'm shooting for a certain level of quality and performance and conduct. But when it comes to your expectations, it's what you're satisfied with. So if your expectations are high, you can get a lot of good things and just be okay with it. If your expectations are low, anything you get is something to celebrate about. So keep your expectations low. Build realistic plans that you can exceed. They say shoot for the stars and maybe you'll fall short on something. No. Shoot realistic and maybe you'll get farther than that. Because how people achieve great things is always through baby steps, small bites. Nobody took over the world. Nobody became Mother Teresa overnight. This was like one baby step at a time. So local musicians have a lot that they're up against. It's hard to stand out. It's hard to book shows. It's hard to get opportunities, to get experience without experience. And it's hard to get the money to record music, to get the money. And you're working a day job and everything. But community makes it easier. And that's one cool thing about Northwest Arkansas. There's a music community. Sometimes I feel like I'm not part of it, for better or for worse. But maybe that's because I'm only here half the time. But when I am in it, I can see that there are people willing to support each other. And so they help each other attain their dreams faster, and everybody gets more of what they want that way. That's a really beautiful thing, when I see someone get into music after a long time and start writing and want to record something, and then a bunch of people show up for free to help this person record a song real quick. It's like nobody really lost anything other than a day. You pay them in pizza. And they make something beautiful and timeless that's on the record forever that anything can happen to. It can reach ears far away now. And if people feel it, then it will catch fire. And there'll be no stopping it. So you just got to do your best and see what happens.
If people want to get in contact with you, how would they?
I'm not open to everybody getting in contact with me, quite frankly. But inquiries about the band can be made on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, at Finix Reggae on all the social media. And then finixreggae@gmail.com is the email. And we're open to talk about collaborations and shows and things like that, for certain. We are a growing, budding collective, and we are happy to be part of this community here where we trade value. We need help, and we have assets, and so we can give and take. Yeah. But we appreciate everyone who gives us their time, their ears, their assistance, their attention, because we believe in what we're doing. We're making beautiful, feel-good music that's uplifting, empowering, that deals with real things and real people and the challenges that they're facing and the methods that they can use to improve their lives and those of everyone around them and change the world for the better, which is the most urgent thing and the best thing you could be doing with your life.